Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
This is animator Ron Husband, and you're listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures. With your hosts, Aljon Go and Dave Bossert.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week, we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culturist, and you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Hey, Aljon, here we are again with one of our truncated programs. We are going to have animator and professor Charlie Bonifacio on the show today with a great interview. Charlie is part of the Canadian animation community. He is a master animator and somebody who's been giving back to the next generation as a teacher up in the Toronto area. So Charlie is joining us from Canada for today's interview, and I'm really looking forward to this.
All right. Well, sit down. It's time for our main event and relax with Charlie Bonifacio right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. We would like to thank Christine Banas, Spencer Wright, Lindsay Scaife, and Joshua Volkert. Support the show for as little as 99 cents per month by clicking on our listener support link in our show notes. If you are interested in advertising your event, business, or service, please email Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. Thank you for your ongoing support.
Skull Rock Podcast, interview time.
Well, Aljon, here we are again. We're going north of the border up into Canada to visit with animator and animation professor Charlie Bonifacio. Charlie, welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Thank you, David and Aljon. It's nice to be with you.
Hey, I got to tell you, Charlie, it's got to be 25 years since I've seen you.
I can't even count.
I can't even imagine, it just seems it's so crazy. But I want to ask you this question I always ask our animation professionals that come on the Skull Rock Podcast. How did you get started in animation? What was your path to become an animation professional?
Probably the same as most kids, a love for cartoons, and drawing from Mad magazines and comic books and stuff as a kid. I decided in grade 9 or in grade 10, I think, to go to an art high school halfway across town because I knew I wanted to do art for a career. And it was like a one-year program. During the last half of the last year, the teacher, Hank Zip, had people just do what they wanted to do. You could paint, you could sculpt, you could do whatever. A friend of mine and I got really jazzed about doing some animation, probably from the Walter T. Foster books. And we did a little short animated film.
I just want to interject here because we've had so many animation professionals on the show talk about the how to animate by Preston Blair, which was published by Walter T. Foster. Mm-hmm. Do you remember buying that copy, or was it given to you?
I can't remember. We had a bunch of them, how to draw dogs and horses, and animation was one of them. The Preston Blair book was one of them. I can't remember if I bought them myself or my mom bought them for me.
Do you still have them?
Not those ones, no. They disappeared in the ether. But yeah, we did a little short animation film. My instructor at high school said, we've sent somebody to Sheridan College for design. I think they have an animation program. Do you want to should we inquire? And I said, sure, and applied and got accepted. My friend didn't come out, so I just hiked from Edmonton, Alberta, out to Ontario to do the animation 3-year diploma program.
And what school was that?
That's Sheridan
It was
College.
Sheridan College, right? Okay. And that was really the main animation college in Canada, wasn't it?
It was basically the only one. I think it was the only one. There wasn't any industry back then either, so I don't know what I was doing. I was just going to do what I wanted to do and learn animation.
And what happened? You got into the program, and did you spend the full 3 years and get your degree?
A diploma. It was only a diploma program.
Oh, it was a diploma. Okay.
Yeah, and then there was a job fair at the end of the third year. They picked 5 or 6 of us to work at Nelvana for a summer project job. We did a bunch of stuff. First thing was wiring desks and putting up corkboard. And then we did a few little tiny animation projects. I got laid off of that. Went to Montreal and worked a little bit of freelance, but I got called back to work on Nelvana's first TV series. They did a holiday series at Christmas, and then stayed there for 11 years.
Really? So you were there like pretty much year round with no layoffs?
Yeah, well, because I could design and draw and do all kinds of other things, they kept me on between projects to fix animation, to do secondary character designs on the next project, and then to animate, and then to do the same again and around. If you were just animating, you kind of came in, you got laid off, and came in for the next animation project.
But you were doing pre-production, animation, and fixes afterwards.
Yeah.
Because now were they shipping a lot of the material overseas to have like finished out, or were you doing most of it there?
At that time, all the holiday specials were done in-house. It was like they collected the best animators they could in the Toronto and surrounding area. And we were trying to invent what Disney was already doing. We didn't have any Disney influence. I think we had a couple of people who had worked with Richard Williams in the past, and that was about it. Everyone else, we were just making it up. So we went through that whole holiday series. We produced Rock and Rule all by ourselves as well, and they lost a bunch of money. So after Rock and Rule, they started to do service projects, which I think we did the first 2 on our own, and then they started shipping them out to Korea and Taipei.
Right. And Rock and Rule, that was the feature?
It was a feature film that was, I don't think it was the first. I think it was the second Canadian feature film produced. I think it was the first Canadian feature film that actually made money. Not Rock and Rule, but the Care Bears movie.
The Care Bears movie, okay.
Rock and Rule came out in Boston over a weekend, and it didn't do well, so they canned it.
Really? Didn't try and give it a shot to for a wider audience?
No.
Wow.
It didn't test well, so they pulled it. That's why they lost so much money, because they couldn't make any in the theaters.
Wow. What a shame.
Yeah.
What a shame. And then you went on to, so you were doing things like Inspector Gadget and Strawberry Shortcakes and Care Bears movies and Star Wars Ewoks.
That's the stuff we were doing, yeah.
Yeah. And you were there for 11 years, which I had no idea. And at the end of that 11-year period, what did you do? What happened? They
were starting to develop a feature film that I was not so interested in the story direction that it was taking, but some of my friends from Sheridan, Anne-Marie Bardwell, Ralph Palmer, you might know those.
Yeah. Anne-Marie and Ralph, I know them.
They were working with Don Bluth and going to Ireland. So Don and Gary called me up and said, would you like to join us? They were working on Land Before Time. And I knew they were going to Ireland. So I said, when you actually go to Ireland, give me a call, because I'd be interested in moving to Ireland. And they did.
That's where we met, right? That's where we met.
In Ireland.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So I left Nelvana after 11 years, moved to Ireland for 2 years, and worked with Bluth. That was my first real Disney, actual people who had worked in the Disney system experience.
Yeah. And you stayed not only for Land Before Time, but you did All Dogs Go to Heaven and Rockadoodle.
Yeah. Part of Rockadoodle, I got a call from a friend of mine who was teaching at Sheridan, said, do you want to come in September and teach? And it felt like about the right kind of timing, although I left mid Rockadoodle, but went back to Canada with my 3 children and started teaching at Sheridan.
Did you get married over in Ireland or married?
Before we left, we brought 2 kids over there.
Okay. You brought 2 kids there. You came home with 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Found one under a patch of clover.
Absolutely.
Then I taught at Sheridan for 6 years.
Wow. And were you were still doing freelance work while you were teaching, yes?
Yeah, little bits of stuff in the summers. I worked on Fern Gully over one summer, did a bunch of commercials for Passion Pictures out of the UK.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Once Upon a Forest, a bunch of little.
Did you work on that Burger King campaign? Because I wound up going over to Passion Pictures in London for like 3 or 4 weeks after we finished The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
And I was in a room with Chuck Gamage for like 3 or 4 weeks working on a Burger King campaign, and then I flew home.
Funny. No, we did Weetabix and Fanta orange drink.
Okay.
Commercials.
Right. Yeah. And why'd you leave Sheridan?
At the time I left Sheridan, there was a bunch of students, like year-end program, like they had an industry day in year-end, and students were getting snapped up. And I was hearing that the students were making as much money as I was making, working as an instructor and working all summer freelance. So I thought maybe it's time to get back into the industry. At the time, Nelvana was starting a 5-picture deal with, Paramount Pictures. So I worked storyboard on a Thief of Always, Clive Barker, Thief of Always. So I storyboarded for a year on that. We were starting to do a Trumpet of the Swan feature, and the deal fell through. So kind of cut Nelvana out of the picture. But while I was working for Nelvana, we did some trips to LA. And again, I went through Disney and had a visit with Anne Marie and Ralph and all the people I knew at Disney. And Phil LaFaro got in touch with me and said, do you want to help us finish? They were working on Hunchback at the time. I said, well, I have a job, but if you brought me on for another feature, I'd be interested. And they said, well, we got Hunchback and Mulan. Would you like to work on either of those? And I looked at the boards on Mulan and thought, this is something I'd love to work on.
Yeah.
So I said, I'd love to work with you, but I want to stay home. And they said, yes. So I was working from home for Mulan and for Lilo and Stitch after that.
And talk a little bit about that, because I think our listeners would be fascinated to know you're living in Toronto essentially, and both Lilo and Stitch and Mulan were being done at the Walt Disney Animation Studios in Orlando, which was part of the Disney Studio Tour.
Yeah.
So walk us through that whole process. Like what happened there?
So they agreed, like they were already working remote with Paris and Australia. So they knew how to do that. So they set me up. They set me up with Scene Machine, 2 ISDN lines that I connected with to download my scene movies. I would go and get the pitch in Florida, come home, do the work, maybe send thumbnails by fax, and then start the shots, and then send my shot movies through the ISDN lines. They'd look at them during review, and I'd be on the phone, and they'd give me their notes over the phone, and I'd talk to Tom after and get my notes from Tom, and continue to work on the shots and send them until they were approved in line test. And then once the line tests were approved, I'd package it all up by FedEx and run down to the FedEx office and ship my drawings to Florida.
Just for our listeners, would you just sort of tell our listeners what the Scene Machine is?
Scene Machine is an animation, a 2D animation program where you still have to shoot drawings one by one under the camera. Then you shoot the drawings and it loads into Scene Machine, and you can adjust your timing and make an MP4 or whatever they were using at the time and send off the movie via phone lines.
Yeah. So you basically had the whole setup. So it was kind of seamless, wasn't it, at that
Yeah,
point?
pretty
I mean,
much.
it's actually only gotten better because now you can easily video conference or you do a Zoom like we're doing right now.
Right.
So you could be anywhere in the world working at this point. The only thing you have to deal with is the time zones, but you were in the same time zone as they.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like faxes and voice, that's what the direction was for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. And how often did you fly down to Florida?
I think they usually grouped it around screenings and maybe a little bit in between that, but it would be a month, 5 weeks, something like that. I would go down.
Okay. So
Yeah.
like 4 to 6 weeks or so, like
Yeah.
every 5 or 6 weeks you'd fly down to Florida,
Yeah.
spend a week or two or
About a week. Yeah. And attend the screening, pick up new shots, talk with the directors, hang out with Tom
yeah.
and you guys, and then go home with a package full of goodies to do the next round.
And they gave you enough work that really kind of kept you busy for a month or more before your next trip down to Florida.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I
and
would
how
usually get pitches there and then have notes in between time. The directors Barry and Tony wanted to do their pitches in person, so that was nice to be there. The Florida studio felt really like its own a lot of ownership with the projects they did, so it was neat to
yeah,
hang.
especially Lilo and Mulan because they were doing them completely down there,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. How was it working with Tom Bancroft and his brother Tony? So Tony was one of the directors on Mulan, and Tom was one of the animators. Did you ever get a say? I know both of them very well. I will tell you that before we even go any further, because I'm going to say some outlandish things. But did Tony ever, really kind of give favoritism to his brother Tom?
I couldn't perceive it.
Spill the beans for us.
I didn't perceive it at all.
I'm only joking,
Yeah,
but in all seriousness, they're both very talented animators, and by the way, both have been on our show. And
right.
I think you've listened to the Tom interview, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great working with Tom. Tom was really generous with his time and his thumbnails. He would fax me a bunch of thumbnails. For notes, it's really hard to explain what you're talking about visually, so he would do a lot of drawing for me. He really improved my timing with Mushu because Mushu had a really snappy sense of timing, so he really helped me out with timing, pulling out the middle to favor the ends. And I
Right.
didn't know Tony that well. I didn't know he was also an animator, but he would send drawings through by fax during reviews of my shots. So it was neat to get a few thumbnails from Tony at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd communicate, we'd send notes back and forth, love letters and all that stuff. So it was really good.
Now you only worked on Lilo and Mulan at the Florida studio,
Yeah.
and then what happened after that? They shut down?
In between that, I was working for Character Builders. I worked on a little bit of a Mulan sequel, a short sequence storyboarding. And then they were doing a Tarzan midquel where Tarzan was young and he left the pack to try and
Right.
discover who he was. So I boarded on that for a while between Mulan and Lilo. After Lilo was finished, I think I started a company with Chuck Gamage. We had a company called Squeeze. And we
Oh,
did
okay. I remember that.
yeah,
You guys were doing commercials, right?
yeah, we did some commercials. We also storyboarded a Winnie the Pooh sequel with some board artists there, and we storyboarded what was going to be the first Tinkerbell Peter Pan sequel. They were
Uh,
they were going to do a sequel to Peter Pan with the both of them, and then there was a part in the feature where they were going to do a like choose your own adventure thing.
mhm.
So we did all the Tinkerbell choose your own adventure bits. And then they scrapped the idea of the whole feature. And I think out of that came the first Tinkerbell feature.
The Return to Neverland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, the Return to Neverland, I can't remember. I can't place that particular project, but I worked on that one with director Robin Budd. Boarded on that show, did designs for some of the secondary characters, and then started to direct animation. Then they closed the studio and pulled the project to Australia.
Okay, I was confusing Back to Neverland with Pixie Hollow, right? Because
Yes.
the Pixie Hollow was the real sort of Tinkerbell movie. Return
Yeah.
to Neverland was sort of supposedly the sequel to Peter Pan.
Yeah, where Wendy grows up and has a
Yeah,
daughter named Jane, and she's growing up in World War II and doesn't believe anymore.
yeah, right. That was it. From that point, were you there when the studio in Florida closed down abruptly, or had you already kind of
Not
left?
there. I think, what were you there? I wasn't.
No, I've always been out in Los Angeles, except for I spent like 6 weeks during Lion King at the Florida studio, but that
Right.
was it,
No, I knew of it, but I can't remember. I think I was probably working with Chuck at the
at that
time.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had basically finished Mulan and then finished Lilo and Stitch,
Yeah,
and then you were on to your own thing.
that's right.
Yeah.
And then we developed a bunch of things that unfortunately cost us a lot of money because they didn't get picked up. And so I entered my fledgling career in CG animation. I got hired by one of my ex-students at a company called Stars that became Arc Productions.
Okay. And what were you working on there?
The first thing we worked on was Nine, Tim Burton and Shane
Yeah.
Acker.
Yeah, I remember that. Was that the short film or the feature? Because
The
they did
feature film. He had
yeah,
done
so
the short
he had
film,
done the
got,
short film, which got nominated, I think, for an Academy
yeah,
for short film,
that's
and
right.
then they wound up turning it into a feature film with Tim attached to it, right? Because Tim was a
Hmm.
fan of the short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we did all the animation in Toronto with a really great team. Some of the animation was done at Duncan Studios as well.
Yes.
So there was a
Down here.
couple of teams going
Yeah,
on.
down here in Los Angeles.
And then after that, we developed and worked on Romeo and Juliet, which was
Oh.
the Pointy Hat production coming out of London.
Yeah, that was a project that was in development at Disney, and then they cut it loose. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was going to be done with Elton John's Rocket Pictures.
that's right. And then when it looked really good, Disney pulled it back under what was the other? There was a parent company that Disney worked with. I forget the name.
Was it Blue Sky? No.
No, eludes me. But I spent about 6 months. I sent some story ideas out to the team in London,
Uh-huh.
and they said, "Would you like to come and work storyboard for a while?" As the picture was still developing. So I moved to London for about 6 months and boarded with Kelly Asbury and the team there.
Yeah, was that your first time in London?
I'd been back and forth a little bit with Passion Pictures, but that was the first time kind of staying there
Yeah,
for.
and you didn't do any work on Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I didn't. No, I
Yeah.
can't remember. I might have been in Ireland during that
Yeah,
time.
you were, because I actually worked on Land Before Time, and then I only stayed for that one picture,
Mm.
and then I moved to London and worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit out of
Yeah.
London. Yeah. Ireland at that point was kind of dreary. It was I think there was I think the summer of 1987 there was one sunny day in July.
You had to love it to stay there, that's for sure. But we had a great time in Ireland. It was
The people were great. It was a great adventure, that's for sure.
yeah.
And so go ahead, continue. You went to London.
Yeah, and then came back to work as an animation soup when the animation started. So it was neat. I got to work with the story team. We got to go down for a screening in LA and be at the review table, kind of brainstorming story fixes and stuff like that. It was really fun. A fun part of my career. Then came back and did animation supervision on that feature, and then ARC just went into development kind of stuff for a couple of projects that they had going at the time short projects. They tried to do a feature film, and that was based on Wizard of Oz. There was about 4 or 5 Wizard of Oz pictures, of which we were one of them. And the producer was jailed for out of the stock market. He was selling pieces of the feature outside the stock market. So
Really?
that crashed, and all of our development kind of just.
By the way, Romeo and Juliet, that was originally being developed at Disney Animation and then went away, and they wound up doing most of it in London, and then it was released through Touchstone. Touchstone Pictures, which was the banner under Disney, under the Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah.
They had Touchstone, they had Hollywood Pictures at that time. I don't think they have Hollywood Pictures anymore, and I think they're releasing everything under Walt. Are they releasing everything, Aljon, now under Disney, or?
Yeah, I mean, they have.
They're not really doing Touchstone anymore, are they? No, right? It's Disney, Marvel, Star Wars.
Pretty much Lucasfilm, yeah.
Right, Lucasfilm, yeah. So, anyway. But yeah, go ahead, Charlie. I'm sorry. I just thought I'd throw that out. We're all sitting here going, "What was that?" Oh yeah, Touchstone.
Yeah, it was a great picture to work on. Really fun.
Kelly was terrific.
He was amazing director.
Yeah, it was very sad that he passed away in 2020.
Yeah, very generous guy and very kind.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
At a certain point, then ARC collapsed. A company called Tangent was able to pick up a bunch of people and started working there on their first feature, Tangent's first feature, which was called Next Gen. It released on Netflix, I believe, and when it came out on Netflix, really, really well done. If you ever get a chance, have a look at it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's on Netflix, and it only came out in 2018, so it's not that old.
Yeah. And my work was done there, but I was able to secure some work with Sergio Pavlos on Klaus.
Which, by the way, I think turned out to be an absolutely beautiful picture. I mean, it was just gorgeous the way that was done.
Really, yeah.
And by all accounts, I think it did very well.
It did well. It got an Oscar nomination, didn't win. It did a lot of records in the Netflix click button.
Yeah, the viewership,
viewership thing. So and yeah, it was really a really amazing project to work on. Really difficult. There was a handful of really talented animators from either feature film or the European community.
Yeah,
and then a bunch of juniors that were really talented and rose to the occasion. It was quite well done. It was a tough go because we probably did, as sometimes is always the case, you do 2/3 of the movie in the last 3 months of a year and a half production.
Sure, it's always the way.
Yeah,
it's sort of that last third of the film is really where people are working long hours.
Yeah,
and usually 6 or 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Now with Klaus, that was being Sergio Pablo was in Spain, where his studio's based.
Yeah.
Is it Madrid or?
Yeah, it's Madrid. He was just outside of Madrid. It's still called Madrid, but it was like a suburb of Madrid.
Suburb of Madrid. But but a lot of the film was done all over the world, right? I mean,
we had some freelancers at work in Chicago and in LA and a couple in Italy and somebody in the UK. And so we were searching for freelancers all along, and with them really collected and did good work. So,
were you working in Spain or were you working in Toronto?
Yeah, we moved to Spain for a year and a half.
Oh, so you did move to Spain? Okay.
I was one of the leads. I was lead animator on all the townspeople. I had to learn all the townspeople and supervise the animation of any townsperson that had an animation bit. So I was in charge of most of the freelance people. Matt Willemese was working as a lead on one of the characters. He animated almost the whole character on his own, and I think he was on the West Coast somewhere. I forget, it might have been Portland, somewhere.
Yeah. Portland or the Bay Area is my guess. Because there's an animation community in Portland. There's an animation community in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So how
So
was
yeah,
it how'd you like living in Madrid?
it was great. Both Ireland and Madrid, you can get to one end of the country or the other in a day.
Yeah.
We did, really hard. I worked really hard, but some weekends we just traveled to the south or the east or the west, or
Yeah.
did some really nice day trips. Working in Madrid was living a bike ride and a walk to the studio. So we lived in a small town. My wife had a passion to learn Spanish, so she was the guide whenever we would go anywhere and talk Spanish to people. The company operated in English, so I didn't pick up much Spanish on the way. So. But it was a great studio, really, really nice people.
How did your kids like living in Spain?
We were kidless at the time.
Oh, you were? They were already grown?
Yeah, already grown.
On their own?
Yeah, 4 kids,
Wow.
and they're scattered Toronto,
Wow.
Vancouver, San Francisco, and just outside of Oakville here.
Wow. Holy
Yeah,
mackerel.
we were kidless. And
that must have been great.
My wife had just retired, and this was a wonderful place for her to retire. She always says she wants to go back.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good.
And what are you doing since you came back from Spain?
So I was tapped again to work at Tangent. They were doing another feature. They had another couple of features. I went back to start on The Monkey King, another Netflix release. I worked on I was doing drawovers on assets from design to drawover for The Monkey King. That may have been the second thing that I worked on. I worked a little bit on Jorge Gutierrez' Maya and the Three.
Yeah.
It's also a Netflix 9-show series. And there was a few 2D animation bits in there that I was consulting and designing and posing and doing rough animation for. That was being finished in After Effects by a guy in New York, and I forget his name now, sorry. But did a little bit of that work and then work on The Monkey King. I was starting to go on to another project, and the Netflix basically pulled both projects from Tangent, and that studio collapsed as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So what did I do after that? I think I worked freelance. I was working freelance. I was going to go on to another project that Sergio was developing called Ember.
Yeah, and so let me ask you this. Why is it that Klaus went out, did so well, got an Academy Award nomination, lots of great buzz. I mean, not just in the animation community, but just by, film goers, people were really buzzing about the movie. Why hasn't he done a follow-up?
He was working on Ember for a long time. They pitched the project about a year before the project was pulled. Beautiful pitch Bible, amazing widescreen.
Yeah.
They were going to do it in Blender so that they could use three-dimensional backgrounds and animate through 3D camera moves. Klaus was done in Toon Boom, but they wanted to use Blender so that they could match camera moves with their animation. They went to their third screening, I believe, and Netflix, for some reason, it might have been that they were just pulling back on everything. It might have been change in executive, but they said, we're not going to produce this movie, so they let it go. They said to Sergio, you can shop it around for a while if you want, but Sergio couldn't find any backers to pick it up.
And what's he been doing?
I don't know. I think he's been
trying to get projects off the ground, right?
Yeah. He's got 3D projects and 2D projects, but I haven't been in touch with him recently to find out, where he's at with stuff. Yeah. He's got a handful of projects that he's trying to get going, but people don't part with their money that often.
Yeah.
Another project that I did, I think, that was what I did after the collapse of Monkey King. There was a project that was going to be done at DNEG. Worked on that one for 9 months doing development, and Netflix pulled that project as well. So Netflix was just like plucking projects out of my life. And at the time, I got an offer to do some consulting for another animation college in Hamilton called Mohawk College. I did some consulting. They wanted to revise their program, and then asked if I'd be interested in coordinating the program for them. With all the polls going on, I decided maybe it's time to get back into teaching and do some pay it forward for the new generation.
Yeah, and so you're now in charge of the animation program at Mohawk College. Are you still doing any freelance work, or is that kind of dried up? Or
not even looking at it, the coordinating and teaching is filling my cup overflowing.
It is.
There's a whole lot of work to do that. So I haven't been doing much freelance since starting that.
What do you think the state of the animation business is right now, in your mind?
I think the writer's strike and the actor's strike had a big impact, and it might have been why Netflix was pulling a lot of stuff. It's slowed down the industry all over the place. I don't know if you're still in the industry, Dave.
No, I mean I've got my finger in sort of on the pulse of things, but I'm not in that business really anymore. I've been writing, but in my mind, from talking to a lot of folks that are still either in the business or just sort of, there's a number of people who've just gone into retirement because there's been this contraction and the work is really dried up. And
Right.
so I would pose the question to you, where do you see things going? Because there's still a lot of animation programs now all over the world that are turning out classfuls of students every May, June. They're graduating. What's that like for them? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm hearing that much, but I understand that that's the case. And there's even, you look on LinkedIn and there's people that that have been working in the industry for 5-10 years that are saying, I'm out of work, I'm open to working.
Yeah.
So the industry is pretty dry at this point. It's a little scary, but I don't doubt that it might bounce back. There will always be people leaving the industry and new people needing to come in.
Sure.
So it's hard to tell where the industry is going. The television industry seems jointed puppet and CG based. Features aren't being done that much these days anymore. Ireland, like Cartoon Saloon, is keeping 2D animation alive with what they do. Amazingly, they have figured out how to get the funding to get features completed, and they look really, really good. Really,
awesome. They're doing some fantastic work over there.
Europe, I think, is probably a little healthier than we are in terms of work getting done, but it seems to me there's still opportunity for students in terms of I don't know, getting taken on, producing their own projects. You can do anything on your computer these days, do little short film projects. The crowdfunding thing is starting to be a viable way of getting something done. Andrew Chesworth did a really beautiful crowdfunded CG animation short.
Yeah.
Which I think will probably get him, if it hasn't already, a directing job at some point somewhere. So I don't know. I don't know. The industry is in question for sure. And I think we had 50 students start last year. We only have 26 this year. I don't know if they've got their pulse. They've got their finger on the pulse of the industry as well, looking around. People are questioning, is AI going to take on jobs?
And that was a question I was going to pose to you, is to get your thoughts on AI. But before I do that, I just did want to touch on, you said there seems to be a little bit more going on in Europe, and I think partly that's because there's more state funding from the various countries in Europe for the arts. And I know Jim Capobianco, who did The Inventor, did crowdfunding, but also had production done in France. Most of the stop motion was done over in France, and he did a lot of post-production in Ireland. So he was kind of doing a sort of multi-country production, and that turned out to be a fantastic film. I think that movie, The Inventor, really hasn't gotten its due yet. You know, it's and maybe that's because they didn't have enough money for marketing and advertising. I don't know what it was, but it was a really terrific film, and it got a lot of good word of mouth. But yeah, let's talk about AI here for a second, because what are your thoughts on it?
I figure entertainment animation, it's not going to make it, but for games, it may. It may be able to manufacture mocap or put mocap together for game kind of purposes.
Yeah.
But
Why don't you think it's going to do much for entertainment on the
I don't
entertainment
know.
side?
It just feels, what I've seen feels soulless, lifeless. It doesn't feel like it's going to be something that really produces unique and character specific animation. I haven't seen it yet.
Do you feel as though, because we're in the infancy of some of these tools, do you think those types of tools in the hands of an artist or an animator who really understands the principles of animation and can use the AI as a tool, do you think that that is going to have some traction?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anybody that's willing to take it on in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps as a tool to do graph editor editing for you. I'm not sure. I don't think
Yeah.
it'll take over any 2D work.
Well, I know that like there was an article on AI, and Jeffrey Katzenberg was quoted as saying 90% of the animation jobs will be done by AI. That felt to me like almost a flip comment, almost, like it may not be 90%. It may
Mhm.
be some portion of jobs, but 90% seems very high to me, and I don't know if he said it for the shock value of it, or if he really thinks that that's going to happen. What do you
Mhm.
think?
I've seen some AI generated short films that are mostly like photographic with a bit of AI making lip sync kind of things and probably some of the motion.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's a nice way to rush out something without thinking about it very
Right.
much.
Right. And I had a demo done for me a few weeks ago where they actually took a still photograph of an individual, and the AI was able to animate that photo in a very convincing way. And there was a text box that you could type in the text, and the still photo was animating with the mouth, lip syncing to AI generated voice, saying whatever you typed into the box, and then you were able to switch to whatever language you wanted. I had the capability of, I think, 50 different languages. So you could take this one individual, they were talking in a convincing way. Now realize it's a still photo, so they were just doing a little bit of head movement and eye blinks and the mouth syncing to the dialogue, but it was fairly convincing. It looked like the person was sitting there talking.
Talking is probably easy, but actually emoting and doing stuff that has emotional
Yes.
impact, I just don't see it. I mean, if they said, yeah, we're gonna create AI versions of Brad Pitt and some other famous actors, and we won't be shooting live action anymore. We're just gonna do AI actors. Everybody would go, are you crazy? But for some reason, they think for animation, which is a performance art, a unique performance art, why do they think they can replace animators who perform through their
Yeah.
drawings or their character animation? Why do they think they can replace animators but not replace live action actors? It's
That
They don't know the value. They don't know the value of great artists.
yeah, and that's
Great
the other
value.
thing. I mean, that's what we've talked about on this show. Aljon and I have had these conversations. It's really about the AI being a tool, and it has to be controlled by somebody who knows what they're doing.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's really the animator or the layout artist or the background or the cinematographer or whatever.
Mhm.
So where where are you just going to be heading up this program until you decide you want to retire?
More than likely, I'm turning 70 in November.
Really? You've aged well, Charlie. You've aged well.
I probably have about 4 years. I'd like to see there. It's a 3-year program, and we're doing a lot of changes. So I'd like to see it through for at least the 3 years and probably another. I'll probably do that till I'm 75, unless everything crashes. I don't see that happening. And then I don't know what I'll do after that. Maybe I've got a couple of short project ideas, long project ideas that I might want to write or pitch somehow. I don't think I'll get back into animating as an industry kind of thing to do.
But do you see yourself doing a personal short film? I mean, John Musker did I'm Hip, and Andreas Deja did Mushka, and there's other folks. Steve Anderson just finished the short that he's going to put out into the festivals.
I'd probably more do a pitch Bible for a couple of features that I have ideas for. Spend some time, maybe do some test animation for those, gather some artists to produce beat boards and stuff like that. I'd probably do something like that more than, I don't have a little short film idea. I don't have,
All right.
All my ideas, probably from working on features for so long, are feature film ideas that you can't do by yourself.
Sure.
And I don't have the stamina as Andreas has to produce, what was it, a 15, 20-minute film?
That was Mushka, I believe, was 20 minutes.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of stamina.
Yeah, but he did it over 10 years.
Yeah.
Charlie, I do have a question for you. It says on your IMDb that you were an animator possibly on the Star Wars Holiday Special. Is this true?
Yeah, that was way back. I can't remember which projects it was between. I think it was whenever the first
down time.
I can't remember, but just did a little bit of, I think, a couple of shots on this comic book that was in one of the TV series specials or something.
Yeah.
Gave this video comic book to kids or something like that.
I was just curious because, this was a time, post heavy metal feature film and rock and roll and music. Star Wars was king of that era. And of course, we'll also talk a little bit. I want to talk about rock and roll for a second too. With the Star Wars Holiday Special, what was your involvement in? What sequence did you do? I guess it was the Boba Fett sequence maybe that you did or helped do.
I think there was a shot of Luke and there was a shot of a sea monster.
That's right. Gotcha. Yeah.
Charlie, it's funny when you start thinking about back over an entire career, some of the projects just blend together, don't they? Yeah. And you start to lose sight of what year was that? Was that before this, or was it after that?
I remember the Ewok series much more because I was in Taipei directing animation on that.
Well, what was it like working with that Taipei unit? Because so much of that stuff was conceptualized stateside, and then working with an overseas unit that you were over. What was that like? Was there a lot of challenges when it came to the language barrier? How did that work out?
Not so bad. We had done most of the movie. Like you were saying, we boarded, we did layouts, we did poses for the Care Bears movie, and then a team went to Korea and I went to Taipei. So we had gone through part of the Care Bears movie, got to know the animators there really well. A lot of them spoke English. I had an interpreter just to make sure that the communication was working well. But those guys...
Was that at James Wong's studio?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great people.
Amazing people.
Really great people.
And got to know the animators really well, and just it was a great working experience. And then they were going to go into the Ewok series. I think, I remember if I went home and did some posing before I went back to work on the first 3 or so of the Ewoks, which are half hours as well. Same crew, same people, same animators. They worked really hard. They did amazing work. And as always, you work 18 hours a day and get whatever sleep you can and just keep, because they've got, 20 animators working and you're just trying to make some notes, send it back, do some drawovers, send it back.
During the dark time right after Return of the Jedi, where Star Wars fans, much like myself, that was all we got. It was, the Ewoks cartoon, and droids and such. So that was pretty awesome that you're involved in that. And
I was involved in the model sheets and the posing, so I can't remember if we were doing that. after. I remember staying in Taipei to do the Ewok stuff. So we must have been preparing that while the Care Bears movie was, I can't remember. It's all a blur, like you're saying, David.
It is. It starts to blend together over time.
Yeah.
Lastly, with rock and roll, which is fun, it brought together a lot of really cool things. Once again, post heavy metal, an awesome soundtrack for one, with some of my favorite bands, but also awesome science fiction, fantasy animation. And that, because I can tell you're a musician, you've got a guitar in the background. What was it like to kind of bring about something that you enjoy, music and animation together like that?
By the way, Charlie, Aljon works for Gibson Guitars in Nashville.
No kidding.
I think I know a guy, like product development. So, but very cool. I mean, so what was it like kind of bringing those passions together, especially during that time? And, you're young and in this animation industry, it seemed like a really cool, hip thing to do, especially after the success of heavy metal, at least, from the outset, it seems like that.
It was really fun. We had I think they were working on Easter Fever, one of the holiday specials, and I got onto development. In the beginning, it was going to be a medieval fantasy. So it was going to take place in a medieval town, like way back then. Angel was a guitar that was like a Pied Piper story. And at some point they decided, let's just bring it into more science fiction, go with punk music. I think it was really Clive Smith direction within that. And the punk scene was just like starting to get more popular. They made that decision without thinking that punk musician aficionados don't go to animated cartoons, which was part of their marketing kind of miss. But it was really fun to be in that sort of development stage, creating characters that looked like Mick Jagger and all those just...
Debbie Harry.
Yeah, Debbie Harry. It felt like fresh. It felt like something that we all wanted to be working on. We had created a really good animation team, and felt like it was kind of being edgy, like no other movie that were being done at the time. As a musician, I was working mostly on Dizzy, the drummer of the band. So they did some drum filming, and I got to do stats and animate over stats of a drummer that was dressed up like my character. But it was mostly us just foraging into a feature film, which we had never done before. And we had a really broad range of animation talent. Some people were still in a TV mode, and some people were kind of really trying to hone their feature film work. We were working at a feature film, probably less than a feature film pace, and we weren't getting the movie done as quickly as they wanted, of course, but we soldiered through, and there were always groundbreaking story stuff going on. They were trying to do some computer animation that was groundbreaking at the time on the screen. Yeah, it was really neat to be involved in something that was produced in Canada. It was one of the first feature films, besides the heavy metal thing that were produced in Canada.
Awesome.
Sorry about my Big Ben clock. I'm going to mute for a sec.
No, you're fine, actually.
Charlie, yeah, it's just really a fun movie to work on.
Any pearls of wisdom for up-and-coming artists that want to get into the industry?
I think what we're going to try and do at Mohawk is really get people interested in drawing again. I know that the CG industry opened up animation to a lot of people that don't draw, but drawing seems to be coming back. And it seems to me that if you learn to draw, it's really good for a visual medium to understand how to draw things and how to compose things and how to create things out of your own head.
And how things move.
And
it's not just shifting a model from point A to point B.
You have to plan.
Actually understanding the movement of the characters.
And understanding the value of a pose, understanding the value of a storytelling image, whether it be a composition or whether it be a pose that communicates without words. Having a drawing ability that allows you to do that. I think when people just shoot themselves performing a line of dialogue, sometimes gets swimmy. It sometimes doesn't have the punch and the efficiency of a drawn piece of animation, because you have to figure out what poses do I want to hit, because I want to make sure then I'm going to hit really strong storytelling poses before I start doing a lot of drawings that are just drifting around. So I think just continuing to develop drawing, your love of movies, your love of animation and animation history, and new kids these days, it seems like the kids that are coming into college are really anime focused a lot more than when we were going to college. It was
Sure.
all Warner Brothers and Disney and those sorts of cartoons, but these days it's anime. So I'm having to catch up on that kind of design language. But for the most part, there's so many different drawing styles and character styles, and the industry is so diverse these days, especially with short projects that aren't CG. I'd encourage students to just take a look at what people are doing, individuals are doing, special projects, because I feel like there's a passion to move out of what I always, the standard CG look and create cartoons and animation styles that are going to look different, that have an artistic taste to them. And you see them in short projects, you see them in European projects.
But you are starting to see them like with the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse or Into the Spider-Verse films.
Yeah.
And also this past year with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles feature.
Yeah.
And has a really nice visual. And Mona
coming out of DNEG had a lot of 2D elements. And Ted T worked as a animation director on that. I'm not sure if you met Ted when you were in Florida.
Ted.
He was an animator there as well.
I'm not sure.
He was animation director on that, and he brought a lot of 2D animation influences. If you look at the film, there's some shots, which is really odd in computer animation, where they hold a position for like 5-7 seconds, but it really works well because Ted understands the storytelling drawing when he sees one. Yeah. And they've done a lot of really neat stuff at DNEG. They're a company that has the substance with all the special effects work they do to have continuity, and then they're trying to get into more 2D animation. They did Intergalactic and Nimona and Bob's Gone Wrong and Mike. There's a lot of stuff coming out of DNEG these days.
Yeah.
Some really, really neat work. So if they can keep doing animation in Canada that's somehow unique and not mainstream, but still produce it there's opportunity.
All right, Charlie. This was a great conversation. It was great catching up with you.
I have to say. And nice meeting you guys after all these years. Aljon, it was nice to meet you, and I'll get in touch when I want to buy a Gibson.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? You're close to Nashville. You're not that far away. You should go down. They've got the Gibson garage in Nashville where you can go in and try out guitars, Aljon, and
build one. I can help spec you one. No problem.
This one was hand built. David Wren, a guy in Toronto.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right.
Yeah, the Bancroft brothers in there will make it a big, a big do over here.
Nashville has the animation mafia.
Yeah.
So, John Pomeroy's down there, the Bancroft brothers,
Wow. All in Nashville.
Yeah, they're all starting to filter into Nashville. There's a bunch of them.
And Tom's going to do some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Tom and Tony are going to do some movies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Charlie, it was great seeing you. Thanks for being on the Skull Rock podcast.
Take my hand. Kat, take my hand. Just take my hand. Okay. And let me tell you about the great Disney travel deal for this week, because the monitor got back on. Yay. You can save on rooms at select Disney resorts this fall and holiday season. It is that time of year after all. So take advantage of this deal. Now you can contact Kristen at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com to save. You can take advantage of her expertise and navigation of the Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and so many more theme parks and cruise lines, little travel portals, so you don't have to do it yourself. All right. And you can save on tons for your vacation. You can see I'm vamping because I'm trying to get everything back up and running here. But you can stay in the Magic this fall and holiday season at select Disney Resort hotels. Save up to 30% on rooms for stays most nights November 24th through December 25th this year. You can enjoy savings Sunday to Thursday nights from October 6th to November 21st. What a deal. Plus, get free park hopper benefits when you take advantage of this offer and upgrade to a Walt Disney hotel room and ticket package that includes non-discounted 4-day or longer date-based theme park tickets with park hopper. So hop all you like and save up to 30% at all these great Disney resorts like Animal Kingdom Lodge, Boardwalk Inn, the Beach Club Village Resort, Port Orleans. You can save up to 25% on some of the other more popular resorts like Bay Lake Tower and Disney's All-Star Sports and Coronado Springs, my personal favorite, right? So there is tons of savings to be had. Explore all the different ways you can save by contacting Kristen today at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com. But wait, there's more. Because Universal Orlando has a brand new ticket deal as well, surrounding all that hype around Epic Universe. And so it's all going to be there for your taking. Halloween Horror Nights is really just a few weeks away when it comes down to it. And I love Halloween Horror Nights. That is great if you're a horror movie buff, a scare buff like myself. Of course, the new DreamWorks land is also open with Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and Trolls, all the stuff that my kids love. Absolutely. So go ahead. You can do this Florida residence exclusive deal for unlimited day ticket, providing access to Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure for an unlimited number of days now through December 18th this year. It's a big deal, right? It's only like $199 plus tax. It's absolutely amazing. It won't get you into Hollywood Horror Nights because that's another separate hard ticket event, but a great deal nonetheless. Take advantage of that deal and so much more for the Universal Orlando Resort, as well as Universal Studios over there at on the left coast, or Disneyland, or the Disney Cruise Line in the new Treasure Ship, or any cruise line whatsoever. Once again, book with Kristen for get your free quote today. Save on all these great deals. Once again, theme parks and cruises at gmail.com. That's themeparkandcruises at gmail.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm animator Mark Kausler. You're listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your Main Street to the world of Disney.
Yet another great interview. I hope our audience has been enjoying these interview segments that we're going to be doing for the next few weeks right here on Skull Rock Podcast. But don't forget, if you love Disney and pop culture, be sure to like and subscribe to all of our feeds there. Wherever you find podcasts, of course, we're all available on all the major services, including now YouTube. So check that out as well. And we would certainly love it if you gave us those 5-star reviews. Everything helps the algorithm and gets us in front of more people. Leave us those reviews and those algorithms will just be popping. Skull Rock Podcast. Share the show as well. We're on all the socials, as I mentioned, Facebook, X. Dave and I are both on LinkedIn, also Instagram. And you can check out the vault of shows there at skullrockpodcast.com. You can even throw some money in the tip jar, if you will. There's a little sponsor link in there if you feel so inclined to support what we do as we bring you this show for free every single week. You can also email Dave and myself. Listener feedback is important. Dave at skullrockpodcast.com or Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. You can also find me on Instagram. The best way to find me, Aljon Go on Instagram. You can also check out my other podcast that I host with my wife, Kristen, and Kat R. Corey, called Dining at Disney Podcast, where we talk about Disney parks and food. You can find that drop twice a week wherever you find podcasts as well. Dave?
Yeah, and Aljon, as I've been mentioning to people over the past month or so, February 21st to the 23rd is the Animation You All Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're going to be there. Aljon and I are going to be there, believe it or not, in person together for the first time. And also, I just want to remind folks, you can hear my Tunes Behind the Tunes show on SiriusXM, Disney Hits Hits, channel 133. Each month, we spotlight a new show. You can get signed copies of my books at theoldmillpress.com. And, of course, you can check me out on davidbossert.com with a bunch of free content and free stuff you can send away for. And with that, Aljon, I'm going to say go out, have a fantastic week, everybody. Be kind to one another. And we'll see you back here next Monday, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.